A specific kind of disaster occurs when empirical logic meets local mythology. A researcher expects a control group and a measurable outcome, while the local environment demands obedience to laws that cannot be proven in a laboratory. The valley of Beerampur in Madhya Pradesh appears as a quiet agricultural village nested in lush greenery. However, beneath that tranquility, the locals navigate their lives around a lethal 400-year-old secret. 500 miles away in New Delhi, Meghna and Ishita operate on a different frequency. These researchers are facing intense academic pressure to synthesize a medical antidote, and they are out of time. The tragedy at Beerampur followed a sequence of errors where modern academic ambition ignored a survival protocol that had stood for 4 centuries. The villagers identify the primary threat as the Nishir Molo, 4 cursed figures bound to a single task, marching through the night with a massive wooden coffin, the tabut, resting on their shoulders. The village follows a strict protocol for Saturday nights. When the heavy footsteps and rhythmic chanting begin, the inhabitants must hide immediately. The rule is simple: stay out of sight and do not make eye contact. We can track the consequences of breaking this rule through the story of Madan. Despite his father's warnings, Madan walked through the forest after dark, confident that his skepticism would protect him from a local legend. Caught deep in the fog, Madan attempted to hide as a rhythmic chant closed in on his position. He made the mistake of looking directly at the 4 figures carrying the coffin, and he never returned home. For the people of Beerampur, these stories act as an instruction manual for dealing with an active environmental hazard. To them, the mythology is an apex predator that must be managed to ensure survival. Back in the city, Meghna's interest in the village began with a recurring nightmare involving a massive bird and a tree that drips bright green liquid from its bark. This shifted from a psychological anomaly to a tangible objective when Ishita discovered an ancient text. The pages described a legendary sap and featured an illustration of the exact tree from Meghna's dreams. The text identifies this green liquid as the Mrityanjay Amrit, a substance highly prized in folktales for its rumored restorative properties. Facing pressure to deliver a functional medical antidote, the researchers decided to locate and extract this biological sample in the field. This created a dangerous information gap. While the locals were locking their doors to survive an active threat, Meghna and Ishita arrived in Beerampur, viewing the village purely as an untapped chemical resource. Meghna and Ishita crossed the threshold into Beerampur just as the village's climate began a sharp, localized shift. The midday heat vanished, replaced by a sudden temperature drop and a fierce dust storm that cast a heavy shadow over the village square. Simultaneously, inside the village temple, the sacred protective lamps, which are kept burning continuously, suddenly extinguished on their own. Despite these signs, the researchers convinced the village head's son, Anuj, to lead them to a 400-year-old ruined palace deep in the forest after the rest of the village had gone to sleep. Because they relied solely on a scientific worldview, the researchers interpreted the gale force winds as a weather anomaly rather than a supernatural defense mechanism attempting to push them out. At midnight, the separate timelines of the village and the researchers synchronized. Inside the palace ruins, Meghna realized that the ancient architecture perfectly matched the layout of the buildings in her Delhi nightmares. Out on the forest border, the Nishir Molo emerged from the mist, cornering 2 local villagers who had stayed out past the safety protocol. Meghna and Ishita heard an impossibly heavy door grind open deep within the palace, at the exact second the lid of the coffin finally unsealed in the forest. A paralyzing scream erupted from the open tabut, echoing through the valley and waking every inhabitant in the village. The scream leaves 2 immediate questions. What is the physical link between Meghna and these ruins? And what exactly emerged from the unsealed coffin?